Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to the Cardfight Empire channel. I know I haven't made a video for a couple of weeks, guys, but I decided after Worlds to take a small break just to kind of reflect on, my goals for this channel, for, the continuation of me playing Cardfight, and etc., etc., how I did at Worlds, and all that stuff. It's just a compiled jumbulation, if that's even a word, of things that I've been thinking about these past few weeks. I'm not quitting Cardfight or anything like that, nothing serious, but it's just like I have a lot of changes going on in my life right now, so it's just a lot of things to reflect on. So I figured I'd take some time to kind of like take a break from my channel while I was reflecting on said stuff. But now I'm back, so yeah. So if you guys were kind of messaging me like, where are you, like, can you make a video on this, on your World's performance, etc., etc. It's just, all these things coming out. But this is going to be a video about the aftermath of Worlds, basically. And what I mean by aftermath is all the things that I either didn't talk about in my vlog or in my interview videos and stuff like that. Just like just small things here and there. Also, there's going to be a part 2. If you are only here for that part, you can just fast forward, where I talk about the deck that I played in Worlds and how I did round to round with it and why I think I lost, etc. But yeah, let's get right into it. So the first part of the video, we're going to be talking about my Shiranui Worlds promo. So for those of you who tuned into my vlog, / just keep up with me in general, you would know that my Shiranui's World promo got stolen on the final day of us being at Worlds. So we were basically, short version of the story is we were in the lobby of the hotel. I was doing Hank's deck profile, the Kagura player that got second place. I was doing his deck profile in the lobby, and basically I had a pile of cards next to me, and after I was done, the Shiranui was in that pile of cards on the top, and after I was done, I sat with 3 people, and or 3 people sat with me at the table, and basically after that I put all my cards away because we were getting ready to go and I was packing up in a hurry. So I didn't do like an inventory of my cards or something, which was like totally my fault that I didn't do an inventory of my own cards, especially the most important ones. But I just assumed that the people that I was sitting by were trustworthy because I kind of hung around them the whole trip. So I didn't expect anything to happen, but then when I got to the airport and I got stuck at the airport, I started going through my cards because I was early to my terminal. So I started going through my cards, and I noticed that my Shiranui was gone. So I thought back to when the last time I saw it was, and the last time I saw it was when I was sitting with those 3 people. So I messaged the 3 people, and I kind of say, hey, like, have any of you seen my Shiranui, etc., etc. All 3 of them said no. I already had like a specific one in mind that I thought stole it because he was like the least trustworthy of the 3, in my opinion. And I don't want to get into details with that, but basically I just wanted to say that I got my Shiranui back, so that's really good. It could have been lost forever to me or whatever could have happened to it. I wanted to give some thanks. First, I want to thank Julian Demares. I'm sorry if I said his last name wrong, but he's basically the French Aquaforce player that I faced in first round of Worlds. It's actually like a very minor detail, but it turned out to be like a big deal because I didn't have a sleeve at Worlds to sleeve my Shiranui in, so Julian ended up giving me one of his Bushiroad yellow sleeves. So it's like a black Bushiroad sleeve with the yellow Cardfight insignia on the back. So that turned out to be like a great help factor in finding my card because he gave me that to sleeve it in, and it's the only sleeve that I have that's like that, and it was a very unique sleeve throughout Worlds. So because he gave me that, I was actually able to find my Shiranui. So I wanted to say thanks to him. Thank you to Eric Volt and Adam Weinstein, Eric Volt being the 70s runner representative from California that I met while I was there. He's also from Team Metastorm, so you guys can go check that channel out. And then also Adam Weinstein was the New Jersey representative. from the US as well. I did an interview with Adam on my channel previously, and that's how I knew him. So I kind of knew both of them before going into Worlds. So the third person that we were sitting with was the person that stole my stuff, and I'm not gonna like say his name because I don't want to create a bunch of drama. If people find out about it, it's whatever. I'm not trying to like throw his name out just like to get, you know, crapped on him, because he's already kind of crapped on by the Cardfight community. But basically, he stole my Shiranui, and I wanted to thank Eric Volt for doing everything that he could, and Adam for doing everything that he could. And while I was already gone from Japan, he got the card back from the said thief, and then he sent it all the way back to my address, to my house. So I wanted to thank him for that, because I feel like those two deserved praise for that. So yeah, but all in all, I talked to Bushiroad representatives. I got my card back. Like, everything's good on that front, which is good, because I was like really, really upset about it initially, because I was like, oh my god, I came to Worlds and then I lost, and my Shiranui promo's gone. So it's like, it wasn't a good feeling. It was a pretty bad feeling, actually. But I'm glad that I got my promo back. I'm glad that I've given myself some time to reflect upon Worlds and what a great experience it was. Because at first I wasn't feeling that great about it, but just only because I'm a really competitive person. So when I lost, like, you can ask Eric Volt, like, me and Eric didn't feel great about losing. So, I mean, and no one feels great about losing. Some people just take it better than others, and I don't take losing very well. Not in the way so that, like, I don't say, like, GG to my opponent and I'm salty. I'm just like, oh, I could have done better, like, to myself. So I'm, like, angry with myself, kind of, for not doing better. But after having some time to reflect upon it, like, and talking to a lot of friends, like, you know, a lot of people have reminded me, like, I went to Japan for, you know, playing the game that I love. So I can't really complain, because a lot of other people didn't make it that far and couldn't say that they went to Japan for the same thing. So it's like, I really should just be thankful that I got the opportunity to go. Even if I didn't win, there's always another chance next year, or like the year after that, or, you know, whatever. But at the end of the day, Bushiroad gave us a great opportunity to travel outside of our country and kind of experience a culture that's not our own, and just kind of be in that atmosphere for even a couple days. So it was an awesome opportunity. I'm thankful to Bushiroad that, you know, that they give that out as a prize, that I was even able to go do that. And even though I lost, it was something to reflect back upon. Now I know going into the future kind of how I will play out, like, really, really high level tournaments, and kind of what to expect from the players and the community. Also what to expect from myself. So yeah, with that being said, let's lead right into the deck that I played. For those of you that know what I played, it's not a surprise to you. But for those of you who don't know what I played, it might be a surprise to you. I actually played Luard during the World Tournament. And the reason is because, the reason is not because I didn't have access to all the other top decks. I had access to Deleters, Overlord, Thavis, etc. I just didn't want to play them because I didn't feel comfortable with all the matchups. So like Overlord, I didn't want to fight the Overlord matchup, like the mirror match, a bunch of times. I also didn't feel confident that if I played against Thavis that I would win, just because Thavis, if they get the right hand, it's so hard to win with Overlord. But also on the other hand, if you get a good hand and they get a bad hand, it's like an auto win. So it's like, I didn't want it to come down to, like, I want to always assume the best of my opponents. So I didn't want to just assume that they would get a bad hand and that they wouldn't be able to fight. I want to assume every deck at their max potential when I'm going into a big level tournament like that. So I didn't feel confident with Overlord against Thavis. I thought that Thavis would be a really big contender that I would see a lot. So I didn't go with Overlord because of that. For the same reason that I didn't go with Overlord, I didn't go with Thavis. I didn't feel confident against the Overlord or Deleter matchup with Thavis. But also, if you don't get a good, like, hand with Thavis, or you don't get attackers, like, ever, you just kind of lose. Like, and I didn't want that. And that's not, you know, preferred either, especially when Overlord just blows up your starter. That kind of gets you started off. So I didn't want to go with Thavis for that reason. Deleters is kind of the same way. Deleters, if you don't get a solid hand, like, it just can get really crappy. Like, You can't fight your opponent efficiently. And when I was expecting Overlord to be like the top contender, it's kind of just like that's kind of a bad matchup for deleters in my opinion. So I didn't want to take a deck that has a bad matchup against the most played deck into the tournament. So I ended up going with Luard, and I'll transition to my Luard deck right here so we can start going over it. This was the list that I played for Worlds, my Luard deck. And the reason I went with Luard is because I felt like it had a solid matchup against everything but except for deleters. Deleters is kind of like an auto lose when you're playing against Luard, but I kind of like took lucky chance and kind of said, okay, there's going to be a lot of Overlord players here. Hopefully the few people that do play deleters get snuffed out by the Overlord players and I won't have to play them. That's kind of the mindset that I was taking into it. And then also against the Overlord matchup, like Overlord might be able to clear my field, but PGs are very effective against all the things that they can do. Also, just being able to stride for free and have things like Fodla would be really, really, really helpful. So as you can see in my list, I ran some things to fight Thavis and Overlord. A really effective thing that came in handy for me was running Hanali, this grade 1, the light colored Cray Elemental you see over here. It was really, really useful just because Thavis, all their restanding skills pretty much cost a counterblast. So with Hanali requiring for you to counterblast on 5th battle or more, Thavis can't get a lot of attacks off, which is, how we lose against Thavis because they attack with one side and the other side, and then Alexandros, they counterblast 1, they flip a G unit, they restand, all their cards get plus power, and then they go for a 4th attack, 5th attack, and then you could possibly get attacked more than that depending on which cards they have on the field. If they have their restanding grade 2, if they have Orthia on the field, there's like an infinite number of ways that they can attack more than 4 times. And so running Hanali like really changed the matchup for me because after I put Hanali in my Luard deck, even back home, I didn't lose to a Thavis player like ever since I had Hanali in my deck. So it ended up working out pretty great. Because I did fight one Aqua Force player, which was Julian, and even though he had to ride Benedict, there was a turn where I would have died because he had Orthia and Alexandros because that combo is just so good. He had those two, and I literally just would have died without Hanali. So it was pretty good that I put in one. It also is kind of useful against the other matchups that were there, like ZTB, decks that just multi-attack, a lot. It's kind of useful to just make them either think about their multi-attack play and do it more carefully because they can't just go balls to the walls, or they just don't do it all together because they don't want to lose all their counterblasts. So yeah, then I ran Creeping Dark Goat. Obviously, Creeping Dark Goat as my starter helps you get into that Luard grade 3 a lot more, which is still a reason that I lost one of my bigger matches because I didn't get to Luard, which was awful. But with GBT 14 coming up, we're getting the new Luard, Dragfall Luard. So hopefully that card, or not hopefully, that card will make the consistency of the deck a lot better because you won't have to ride things like Fodla or Babakar anymore. But I did run 2, my Stride Zone at the top there, if you can't see it, is 2 Drag Strider Luard, 2 Orgeyser Doom, 2 Orgeyser Dragon, 1 Spectral, to which I want to thank my friend Alex for buying for me right before I had to go to Worlds because I wasn't going to have a Spectral because I gave mine away to 2 people. But he actually bought me an SP1 for me to use before Worlds, so I appreciate him very much for that. It did finish off one of my Overlord opponents, so I wouldn't have had that option there if it were not for him. Then we ran 1 Irrigun Vert, the GB8. We ran 1 Ogma, 2 Carnivore Dragons, 1 Sabreeze. Our G-Guardians were 2 Plot Maker Dragon, 1, I'm forgetting what it's called. I think it's, I want to say Ionis, but I know that that's the Aqua Force one. I think it's Gelito. 1 Gelito G-Guard and then 1 Dismal. Obviously, it's a pretty standard G-Zone, I feel like, for Luard. It's not too different from my other Luard lists that I've given you guys. However, Drag Strider just really helps against Overlord when they're just putting a bunch of PGs and stuff in their hand. And they don't have G-Guards that are that strong, like that big, unless they have the one G-Guard that gives them 10k shield for every open rearguard circle. So when you attack them with Drag Strider, you have to make sure that it's bigger than 46, basically, because you're going to get rid of 2 circles. Then the Overlord opponent's going to G-Guard with that. And then they're going to be 46 versus your, whatever you are. If I was using it against Overlord, then chances are I have the grade 1 behind it, Gonvar, that you see to the bottom left. Basically, you just go into Drag Strider, you get that really, really big, and then you just swing at them, and their only choices are either to A, use the G-Guard that gets really big, and it's not enough, or B, they have to defeat Flare you. And then if they defeat Flare you, not only are they only getting rid of one of your cards, because the 2 cards that you pop are in the back row, not only are they getting rid of one of your cards, but they also have to guard with more, because your Drag Strider by itself will be at least 32. So they are guarding for 26, and they have to give you at least 10k more shield without guarding with grade 1s and higher from their hand. So they have to G-Guard, then give you zeros for, probably 2 more zeros for, a 2 to pass or a 3 to pass. So it's very, very good in that respect. I finished off an Overlord player doing that as well. Then we have our 2 Dooms, basically field control, Spectral for when they're, at 4 or 5 damage, you just want to finish them off. It's our only restander, kind of. I kind of wish that Drag Strider was a restander, but we didn't get it as a restander, so I got kind of sad about that. But we have Spectral, so I guess it's fine. I just don't like the way that Spectral works sometimes. But yeah, Spectral. Then we have Eargun Vert. Every time I went into Eargun Vert, I just won the game. I think this card is so much more powerful than people give it credit for, just because of the combos that you can do with Grosnay and all your PGs and stuff in the late game with it. So it's really good. Then we have one Ogma. Basically, I ran Ogma for the chance that I would see some deck that can get rid of itself, like Night Rose or Grand Blue or anything really that just leaves an open board. Also, with me playing so many control options, it's very likely that sometimes I would clear my opponent's board, and sometimes they won't have anything else to play for the next turn, so they just go into their Vanguard, and then they just attack with Vanguard. And if they have an open circle, I can just go into Ogma after that and make them discard 5. So that's pretty good. That was part of the reason that I won against the Overlord matchup leading up to the Spectral that I won with. Just because I made him discard 5 when he didn't really have any good rearguards to play for a turn, so he strode into the Purge, he burned me for damage, and then he didn't play any rearguard. So the next turn, I was Ogma, discard 5. And then the next turn after that, I just Spectraled him. So it ended up working out really well, because the Purge checks that he got, the 5 checks that he got off of me, I immediately made him discard 5 with Ogma, so it was almost like his Purge checks meant nothing. Running 2 Carnivore, just because there's a lot of times where this deck is counterblast heavy, and especially with Honolly being in play, where you want to go into Carnivore Dragon and get Abyssal Owls, and then just use it to unflip or countercharge. There's a lot of times where you won't be able to retire with your other strides because they require a counterblast before you start retiring your cards. But sometimes you just start out the turn with 0 counterblast, which is not ideal, but when you're playing in stuff of the future, especially Gridora, things that can take your counterblast away from you or that require your counterblast to do what you need to do to stay alive against them. Obviously, Gridora wasn't in Worlds because Zoo Booster wasn't out yet, but I'm just saying, things to, think about why to run Carnivore Dragon at 2 and stuff like that. It's almost, I think I said this in my winning Jacksonville profile, but Carnivore Dragon's my favorite card. It's it's so helpful in so many situations. Even First Stride giving 4k to the front row just makes Morfessa's 18k, and then makes Grosnay by itself 13. And Noise, depending on what it's at, can also be 18 or 13, or sorry, it's 18 or 15 or 13. So either way, those are all good numbers to change to from its original 9K. We ran Dismal in case our opponent attacked into our rearguard, and it would be our only rearguard left. And we would Dismal it so that we would be able to use Luard's on stride skill the following turn. Sabreeze so that our opponent doesn't, just stay gridlocked. We never used the Sabreeze, but I'm still happy that I ran it, like, just for the possibility. It might have been a thing where if I made top 8 and I was able to get past the Overlord players, and then I was able to face Jesus in the finals, I guess I might have won, because in my opinion, I just consider, like, after a first stride, I consider Luard to be an auto win, like, against Blasters. So, like, Blasters are just an auto win for Luard after first stride, as long as they don't, like, super sack you. But who knows how it would have went. I can't really say, because I didn't really fight the matchup. But we did run 4 Luards. Obviously, you want to ride that all the time. We ran 3 Fadlas and 1 Babakar. The reason that I ran 1 Babakar is that Babakar is like a free Fadla, and a lot of times, like I said, this deck can get very counterblast heavy at times, so I only wanted to run 3 Fadla. Obviously still 3 because the pluses that it can bring to you are like unprecedented, just because it lets you counterblast 1, but it also lets you get 2 cards that you get to pick. And then Babakar is just like top card to field, so there was some times where I like played Babakar and like it's a top deck heal to the field. So it just makes you really sad, and it's just like I could have not done that, But yeah, we ran 4 Noise for the same reason, against control, refilling our board. 4 Grosnay, because we really wanted to get the Grosnay pumps in there to hit our opponent. We ran 3 Morfessa because I was kind of like iffy about like running Morfessa at 4, just because I didn't want it to come up in like the domination matchup. For some reason, I thought that a good amount of people, or maybe not a good amount of people, but like as like an anti-meta call, like some people here and there might be playing domination. That's what I thought would happen. So I'm always kind of wary of running Morfessa against the domination, like when domination is powerful, just because like it hurts to get Morfessa dominated and then attack us with our own Morfessa. So yeah, that's the thing. So then going to the grade 1s, we had 4 Abyssal Owl. Abyssal Owl is basically just your counter charge, also your early game search for Luard, very important. Ezra's the best PG in the game, I would probably say. Like, it's just so free when it's in this deck. Like, it's the best PG, like, ever, I think. But yeah, just the ability to recycle your PDs over and over and over and over and over without like a real cost, and your cost is like just plussing you when you use it on like stuff like Belial Owl, and Cursed-Eyed Raven like targets, stuff like that. Then we ran 2 Brandwin. Obviously, we still want to stride. We still have to like get that initial first stride off without using large free stride skill, so it's very useful to run stride frauders anyways. And also in the case that we come up against Deleters, it is a very, very, very abyssal matchup for us, but we still want to be able to stride just in case we can somehow fight it out. I've won very few Deleter matches, but it's always been because I had the brand wins and extra Fadlas and grade 3s to stride with. So yeah. Then I ran 2 Swordbreakers, obviously just the first turn plus draw. 1 Vanguard for the Drag Strider turns. 1 Honolulu for the multi-attack matchups like Thavis, ZTV, etc. 4 Belial Owl for the draws, like that card's a staple in Luard. If you're not running Belial Owl, what are you doing? Then we ran 4 Cursed-Eyed Raven. I wanted to run Rainbow Trigger lineup just because stand triggers are really good with all my main attackers in this deck. Morfessa with stand triggers really good on hit pressure. Grosnay is insane with stand triggers. Like, I don't even think I have to tell you guys that. You guys already know how the deck works. But then I ran draw triggers, Howl, just for some soul. I also could have ran Drag Wizard in Need, which does the same thing, but it's just a common. I wish they printed that card in like triple R, at least double R, then I could have used it because that's better art in my opinion. But Howl is double R, so I did use it instead. Then we ran 4 of the Gelito Heal just for the drop draw when we went into this, which basically makes this G-Guard itself and a Agleam at the same time if I need it to be. So that was the list. As far as talking about matchups and what I expected going into this tournament, I expected Overlord, so that's why there is 1 Babakar and 3 Fadlas. Otherwise, I just would have ran 3 Fadlas. I put in that extra grade 3 option of Babakar just because I expected my board to get cleared a lot more frequently in this meta going into Worlds. I also ran 4 Noish for the same reason, refills my board, and then 4 Cursed Raven for the same reason. I just need to get my board back like really bad against Overlord when they clear my whole board. So, yep, there was that. And then Thavis, obviously, Hanali works well in the matchup. Hanali also works well in the deleter matchup if you can get it in the early game somehow. I discovered that while I was playtesting, while I was there. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so if you like starve them in damage and you also have Hanali in your hand in the start turn, like it's really good for you. As good as it can get anyways. It's still a terrible matchup for you, but as good as it can get. Let's leave it there. Then I wasn't sure what else to expect as far as like rogue stuff. Blasters I don't really ever worry about when I'm fighting with this deck, just because like if I survive the first stride turn, like I'm good after that. Like I have infinite PGs through Ezra's, and that's kind of like that deck's big weakness, in my opinion, is that if you always have a PG to PG, there's stuff like Alfred, Gancelot, the rear guards, like you just get too big of a hand for them to work through, and you almost always end up winning against blasters. So I don't really ever worry about them, especially the build that Jesus ran. I do think that is a really good build against like Overlord players and stuff like that, because it restands with the stand trigger Solgal and allows you to get more attacks. But more attacks against Luard doesn't really matter as much as them running the crits against us, because what we fear is them finishing us off early, which means them critting us to death. Like we probably have to always no guard the first Gancelot stride. So if they like double crit or triple crit us, like that's how I lost during Atlanta regionals when I was playing this deck. Is like I fought a Blasters player, I was at 1 damage, I had to no guard his Gancelot, and then he quadruple crit me. So it's just like things like that. Like we really fear fighting Blasters. Like we have that one turn where we're like, please don't kill us, and then after that we're like, fine, you know. So you know, it's just things to think about. Like I said, I didn't really know what else to expect going into this. I knew that Eric was either going to play Seven Seas or Chaos Breaker, but that was one person. I knew that a lot of people were playing Overlord, so obviously I planned accordingly. And then I thought that a lot of people would play Thavis, so I planned accordingly as well. It just didn't end up working out the way I wanted. So my first game of the day, I fought Julian. I'm not even going to try to say his last name again because I don't want to butcher it in the same video twice. So he was playing Aquaforce. I was kind of nervous about it because he looked like he had, like, when we drew our opening hands, he put back 1 and shuffled and drew back. So I was like, okay, he has a pretty good hand if he put back 1. And meanwhile, me, I put back 4 because I started with an Abyssal Owl and 4 grade 0s. So when I put back my grade 0s and drew my hand back, I got a Morfessa, a Grosnay, a Luard, and a Fadla. And I was like, yes, all right, we can play the game, like, solidly now. Like, when you're a Luard player, you just always hope that you get Luard as that grade 3 and also a Stride Fodder and then, like, a 1 and a 2. And you can pretty much work from that. You're Gucci. But when we got to grade 3, I rode to grade 3 first, and then Julian rode to grade 3. And the previous turn before that, he had stayed on grade 2 for a turn. So I was kind of wondering, like, I was like, okay, you know, maybe he just wants to play the grade 2 game. And I don't have enough counterboss to do Sabriz, so because he was counterboss starving me because I was rushing him with my rear guards. So, which was the smart play to do, like, especially for what comes next. So he had to ride Benedict, and it turns out I talked to him after the match, and he was running 4 new Thavis, 2 old Thavis, and then 1 Benedict, and the 1 Benedict that he runs, he had to ride. So I felt his pain with that, because as soon as he rode it, mentally I was like, oh my god, he just rode Benedict, like, this is going to be such an easy game from this point. But it's kind of like the equivalent of me riding Fadla, except it's almost worse, because you have to take one of your like rear guards and use it as Vanguard. I mean, at least it's 10k, you know, which is kind of solid, but and Fadla's 9k, but it's still terrible nonetheless. Like, I was really sad and happy that my first round of Worlds had to be like that, because I know I would just feel terrible if that happened to me in like the first round of Worlds. It's just very demoralizing. But yeah, regardless, nonetheless, he did give me that sleeve that helped me find my Shiranui, and he was just an awesome person in general, so I really enjoyed talking to him. And he treated the match with like real respect and pride. Like, I really respected the way that he was able to just, oh my god, I had to ride Benedict, but it's okay, next round, because I would have been just, crushed. Like, it would have been ridiculous if I had to ride Fadla in the first game and then I lost because of it. Like, it would have been so bad. But in that matchup, even though he rode Benedict, he almost won one turn, but he didn't, just because I had called Hanali off of my stride skill the previous turn, which actually saved my butt. So I was thinking about not doing it just because he was on Benedict and going for more aggressive grade 1s, like maybe some Sword Breakers first turn to get more draws off, or Abyssal Owls just for the 7k and the unflip when I need it. But it turned out to be a really good option to go with Hanali, because it saved my butt from dying when he played an Orthia and Alexandros the next turn after that. So I won because of Hanali and because he rode Benedict. I don't really know how it would have went if he rode regular Tavis, but I think I would have still won. I'm not going to say for sure, because obviously that didn't happen, so I don't know. But I think I would have won purely based off of the fact that when I've been playtesting my Luard deck against Tavis, like, I've never been beat by Tavis while I've had my Hanali, so at least with this deck. So it's just very, very good tech card, in my opinion, against Tavis. My second round, I fought against, I'm forgetting his name, but it was an Overlord player from Australia. He made top 8, and this was my first loss of the day. So basically, when I played against him, like, he just started out with like an insane first turn rush. Like, he had like 3 Conros, I believe, in his opening hand, and like one of the cards that he had in his hand was a Doombringer High Flame. So he rode a Conro, called a Conro, revealed grade 3, searched a grade 3, discarded a grade 3, revealed the other Conro, did the same thing, and then he called a Doombringer High Flame behind one of the Conros, and then put 2 of the grade 3s back from his drop zone that he just discarded, shuffled his deck, and then drew a card. So I was like, oh my god, this is insane. Like, and I thought he wouldn't have a grade 2 after that, but it turns out like the next turn after that, he top ticked the grade 2, the 10k nonetheless. So it was just an insane match, and it was over before I could even stride. So I didn't even stride that game. I just completely got swept that game, and it was just really bad. Then I also had to ride Fadla in that game, which didn't help as well, but it was still just a clean sweep. But moving on to the third game, I played a player from Italy. I didn't get his name either. This was the player that I played that didn't speak English very well, so we just kind of had to like hold up our fingers as far as numbers to talk to each other. Like, if I was attacking, I would be like, I'm attacking for 14 or something. So he kind of seemed to know the English numbers, but other than that, like, he wasn't very good with the numbers. Like, when I would say like, Morfessa skill, do this, 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 he would like ask to read it, and then he reads it and then kind of like puts it back. Like, but he wasn't really like speaking English the whole time, and I could tell that he kind of struggled with English. So we just kind of like played knowing like the way we know Vanguard, and just asking each other numbers with our fingers and stuff like that. So I ended up winning against him. This was the match that I Ogmud, and then I went into Spectral. I went into Doomed for the first turn, and then the first turn I got like a good amount of pluses off along with Blackwing Swordbreaker. And also I just had like a Fadla in my hand after that the whole time. So the next time he cleared my board, I just Fadla'd, and then I went for the Ogma play. I tried to draw a lot of cards, and then I, with my PGs, my Belial Elves, etc., and then I played down a bunch of grade 1s, and he had just purged me and drove check 4. So, or sorry, he drove check 5. So the 5 cards that he drove check, he had in his hand, and then I just made him discard 5 with Ogma, and then he had like 4 cards left in his hand. He still survived that turn with 2 cards in his hand, but then the next turn after that, I Spectraled him, and he just didn't survive it. Then the fourth game, I played against another Australian Overlord player. he was kind of like not rude, but he was just very stern of an opponent. He never talked, and he just kind of like, I don't know, like it was like a weird atmosphere. Like he definitely wasn't like the previous 3 players I just played that were like very, you know, lighthearted and cool. But we didn't really talk to each other the whole time. I didn't even find a grade 3 against this guy, and then when I did on the 5th turn, I found a grade 3 and it was Fadla. So I rode that and I got screwed, and then I just lost. So it's just like 2 Overlord games in a row where I had to ride Fadla. I also did ride Fadla against the Italian guy at first, but thankfully I went first, and so I rode Fadla, used the skill to call out 2 grade 0s, and then the next turn I drew into Luard. So I re-rode Luard and I strode. So I rode Fadla, but I wasn't on Fadla for more than a turn. But for the other 2 Overlord matchups, I was on Fadla like the entire time, which sucked. Like I was X2 because of that. And then my 5th round, I fought against Mr. Mohammed from the UK, but he won the Germany qualifier. He was playing Susano. It was a kind of rough game at the beginning, but after that, like I just got a lot of PGs. I was holding the PGs in my hand. I was healing frequently from turn to turn, so since I was healing, that meant that Ikihishima wasn't doing as much to me, just because, you know, I could take some attacks here and there and then just PG the other ones. So I ended up winning that match against Mohammed, so that made me 3-2 at the end of the 5 rounds, and then I found out that Derek, which I'm just now remembering his name, Derek Dow, was the first Overlord player that I lost to. And I believe the second one's name is Andy or something like that. But Derek was the first one I lost to. And then I found out from a head judge that, like, going into the 5th round, he was still undefeated. And so he was still undefeated, and then he got down paired to an X1. And I found out that if he would have won that game, then I still would have been in top 8. Because I would have been in the top 4 of my bracket, since I would have just lost to an undefeated and an X1. But because he lost to the X1, it like screwed my tiebreakers, so I just didn't make top 8 because of that, and I was like considered whatever is 9th place in our bracket. So I don't know, it felt pretty bad, like, but at the same time, there was people in like in the A bracket or the A version, like I was in B bracket, but there were people in A bracket that were X1 and literally didn't top. So I can only imagine how bad that felt, like having to be undefeated or top. Like, and I think the reason that they, like, 2 of the X1s didn't top is because the undefeated, which was Hank in the A block, he got beat by someone else, and it made him not undefeated anymore, which made all of the top 8 people X1s because both undefeateds got beat. So if both undefeateds didn't get beat, it would have been a lot different tournament. I would have obviously topped with Luard, and that would have been insane because I feel like it would have created like a stir, you know, like topping in Worlds with Luard, especially right before GBT 14, where I believe that they will descend or upon the battlefield or ascend to greatness once again. But yeah, that has been my video on the aftermath of Worlds. If you guys liked the video, please leave a thumbs up on the video, aka a like. It helps a bunch. Make sure to go in the description down below and check out our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And if you want to support the channel a little more than just your views or your subscription or your loss, or your like, please go to the Patreon, and you can donate any amount you want. There's some awesome prizes included to the Patreon, so I'll leave that to go check that out for you guys. Check that out for yourselves. I can't speak English today, but I'll leave that to you guys to check out for yourselves. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire. I'm back with more videos, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.